All right, hello, and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and I want to start things off by issuing a little bit of a word of warning, a slight caution, and I'll get to that. But just before we do, I want to point out that around 40%, just under 40% of you are currently unsubscribed, but you come here every day anyway. So if you're one of those people, you know what to do. The next thing I want to do is talk about this word of caution, right? So this is Bitcoin dominance. Now, let me preface this by saying I don't really pay attention to Bitcoin dominance. I've stated this before. I tend to just keep things really simple and trade the price. I don't really care what Bitcoin dominance is for the most part. And that's because I stay away from altcoins. Most people that pay massive attention to Bitcoin dominance want to know whether it's better to be positioned in Bitcoin versus altcoins. And so for those reasons, I don't usually follow this metric. But with Bitcoin dominance currently sat just below 52%, I'm seeing an awful lot of people start to assume that what comes next is a massive drawdown for the Bitcoin dominance and therefore an alt season, which is currently trending on Twitter today. With everyone getting excited on Twitter about an altcoin season, with everyone starting to get really, really excited that alts are about to start sending, I just want to start this off by saying, be careful what you wish for, okay? Now, first of all, if I zoom this chart out, and again, I don't really chart Bitcoin dominance. I don't really pay attention to it. But what do you see here? Because what I see is a massive accumulation zone that has now had a range break with a backtest and moving off. So if this wasn't Bitcoin dominance, and if I was going to objectively look at this with technical analysis, what I would say is we have a range breakout with a backtest and we're moving higher. And I see no reason why this thing couldn't run to 70. I see no reason why we couldn't make it up into this neighborhood. Now, I'm not saying it will. Nobody really knows in the short term, right? There's some logical resistance in this neighborhood here, which is the underside of all of this. This was support, as you can see here. So maybe we get stalled out and we do roll over. But one thing I want to make very, very clear here is while everyone is expecting this to instantly reject and for alts to start sending, when I hop into a Bitcoin chart, here's the truth of the matter, okay? If Bitcoin's price can make its way up to the all-time high and then break, this is the neighborhood where you should start to expect altcoins to fly. If, however, we get back up into this danger zone, this blue area here, and then Bitcoin starts to stall out, and at the same time, alts start mooning at this point here, this, to me, is a massive, massive danger signal that Bitcoin is, in fact, not going to break its all-time high. If we get into this neighborhood, Bitcoin stalls out and alts start pumping, dominance starts breaking down, then the only thing I'll be anticipating is a severe rollover for Bitcoin. This would not at all be a healthy setup. So my base case is still that Bitcoin is going to break all-time highs, and my base case is still that it's going to do it this year. Like I said, if we make our way up, break the all-time high, and this is the area when we break Bitcoin's all-time high, the altcoins start mooning, then everything is fine and dandy. But like I said at the start, be careful what you wish for, because if Bitcoin makes it into this sort of neighborhood here, stalls out and alts start pumping, then the only thing to expect is for Bitcoin's price to break down severely. So when I couple this piece of information, this piece of experience, this piece of knowledge with the current chart, I see no reason why anyone should be cheering for an alt season at the moment. I also see no reason why, if we can break above this little area of resistance here, we shouldn't move straight up towards at least the mid 60s. I don't see any reason from a technical perspective why, if we can just crack this bit of resistance here, we shouldn't be up into the mid 60s shortly thereafter. Given that the institutions are all pursuing Bitcoin ETF approval at the moment, there is massive amounts of capital ready to flow into Bitcoin. Now, will there end up being some altcoin ETFs? Maybe. Will some of that money that comes from institutions find its way into certain altcoins? Yes, quite likely. But with everyone championing this alt season, I have to remain objective. And objectively speaking, unless we get rejected right here, right now, then I see no reason why 60+% dominance for Bitcoin isn't coming in the near future. And like I said, be careful what you wish for, because if alts start flying before Bitcoin breaks its all-time high, then historically, what that tells us is what comes next for Bitcoin is a rollover before it takes out its all-time high, and therefore major downside for the price of Bitcoin. And let's be honest, whether you care about Bitcoin or not, whether you're all in alts or not, historically speaking, there is no bull market for altcoins without Bitcoin cracking its all-time high. So whether you like Bitcoin or not, whether you're all in altcoins or not, if you really want the best for your altcoins, you need Bitcoin to break its all-time high. So we are all in the same boat, whether you're a Bitcoin maxi or whether you're an altcoin only person, you really need Bitcoin to break its all-time high for you to have the best portfolio performance. So I say again, be careful what you wish for. And like I said, objectively speaking, this is just a massive Wyckoff accumulation with a breakout and a backtest. So it's difficult for me to think anything other than Bitcoin's dominance is going to continue to the upside, especially with the institutional interest. Bitcoin continues to do Bitcoin things, and this is it against the Turkish lira right here. So as you can see, new all-time highs, same as against the Argentinian peso. And here's Bitcoin priced in M2 for the US. You can see higher lows, uptrend. Bitcoin continues to do Bitcoin things. It continues to outpace the debasement of fiat currency. I've got a list here, as you can see: BlackRock, Fidelity, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, Goldman, so on and so forth. All of these are all getting into Bitcoin at the moment via ETFs and digital asset licenses. They have over $27 trillion in assets under management. And remember, the Bitcoin market cap currently sits at around 600 billion. So expect massive multiples for the price of Bitcoin once this money starts to make its way into the system. And as if that's not enough, here's HSBC also coming into the space. They're about to launch a Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. So there really is no shortage of capital at the moment. And as if all that is not enough money to flow into this space, Cathie Wood's ARK Invest is saying it's first in line to get a potential approval for a spot Bitcoin ETF, even ahead of BlackRock. So again, more and more money is racing and competing to flow into this space. And all of this makes me think that we are likely going to see Bitcoin dominance continue higher. Last week, we also had one of the biggest weekly inflows in an entire year flow into a Bitcoin futures ETF. And its assets have just topped 1 billion again. It also traded $500 million in shares on Friday alone, which it had only done about 5 times before. So make no mistake about it, there's a tsunami of money coming into this space. In other news, the bankrupt FTX exchange has apparently recovered around 7 billion in liquid assets. So maybe there's going to be some level of customer reimbursement. I doubt it personally, but presumably if they've recovered money, they should return some of that to their customers, right? And over in traditional finance, as we are just days away now from the month of July, did you know that over the past 10 years, stocks have been higher in July 9 out of 10 times? Also, the month of July has the best average return out of all 12 months. And what's really interesting about this is, what do we know is coming? If you've been on this channel before, at least, what do we know is coming at the end of this month? Of course, the daily cycle low for the stock market. Just before we get into some charts, here's the USD from the king of cycles himself, Bob Lucas. Bob calling for a near imminent breakdown of the USD, sweeping its lows and making its way down to its 3-year cycle low due early 2024. And so here's the dollar. As you can see, still in a downtrend, making its way down to this final layer of support. We can lose that, then expect massive, massive risk on rallies across the board. Here's gold, still pushing this gold short, still going to continue to push this gold short unless we break out of this downward sloping blue resistance line. And if we do break out of this downward sloping blue resistance line, I will actually flip long on a breakout. But for now, still expecting further downside until the market proves me wrong. The same is true of silver, still kind of following this arbitrary blue squiggle of mine. So until we can break out of this downward sloping blue resistance line, expect me to remain on the sidelines, break out of that, and I will of course add along for silver. The S&P 500 behaving itself, isn't it? On its way to a daily cycle low. So what I can hope, as I've said multiple times, the best thing I want to see, or the best thing I could hope for, I should say, is we get this 2 drives pattern. So we come down, little counter trend bounce, come down again, undercut that low, form a swing, and that is where we'll mark the daily cycle low. So have we come down enough now to get the first counter trend bounce so that we can come down and undercut that low, form a swing, and mark that as the daily cycle low? Seems like we're getting into that neighborhood. It seems like we're approaching the daily cycle low. How low down is anyone's guess, but in terms of time, if we grab the cycle low from before, which is here, measure it out across, we're currently on day 35, so today will be 36 once the market opens. Anywhere between 38 and 42 will be absolutely acceptable for a tolerance. So any kind of swing low there, particularly if we can get that 2 drives pattern, and I think we can mark that the cycle low. I think we can add along. I think we can move the stop up underneath the first one and then see what the market can give going forward. At the same time as that happens, I'll be looking to draw a trend line here and see where the NASDAQ bounces from. Once we can bounce off of one of these supports and break this downward sloping blue resistance line, we'll add a NASDAQ long back as well, so it will potentially look something like this maybe, or it could come from lower down, wherever it breaks out from. But that's what we'll be looking to do, add along and see what the market can give. At the same time, we'll be looking for the Dow Jones to form its swing at the end of the month and reverse, and that's where we'll be looking to get long on that swing. As of yesterday, I added a VIX position, as you can see here. So I added this yesterday. I did warn you I was going to do this in yesterday's video. I'm not super confident in this trade at the moment, to be honest, and the reason for that is The VIX is clearly being suppressed. The Fed has a massive short position on the VIX, and by now we should have expected some level of counter trend bounce. Now, maybe that will come through the end of the week. Maybe we are going to get a little spike up, but I don't really fancy my odds on this trade as it stands. But for the meantime, we'll let the stop do the worrying. We'll see if we can get a spike. And if we can get a spike anywhere above 17, 18, then I'll consider this a bonus. Apple very much still holding an uptrend. So long and strong, continue to push. Tesla seems to be making its way down to eventually find some level of support. So wherever it stops, we will adjust this trend line to encapsulate wherever it stops. We'll mark that as our new uptrend, just like we did for Apple here with setting these blue and yellow trend lines. And then we'll use that as our invalidation point to exit the trade. We'll probably add along once we make a swing as well at the end of the month. And then we'll move the stop up under the first one. Bitcoin, is this a bull flag? Or is this going to turn into a savage Bart Simpson pattern, reverse down here and then go? Now, this would be really nice, wouldn't it? This would be really, really nice because a lot of people, myself included, did not take this breakout. So maybe it's asking too much. Maybe that would please too many people if we were indeed to do that. I think quite possibly we have to be ready here to draw a line and buy a bull flag break. Perhaps it will look something like this orange fractal here. As it stands, hoping for a decline into that cycle low. If not, if it doesn't behave that way and it just breaks out from here, then we might have to accept an alternate count for the Bitcoin daily cycle lows. Here's Ethereum, still pushing this long, so not much more to say about that, apart from it's broken out, maybe going to come in for a back test and go. We'll see what the market can give. And I've still got my XRP position, although that is looking weaker and weaker. It probably is going to want to chop around in here for a bit before it can go again. So if that's the case, maybe we pay a stop, maybe we can hang on, and either way, once we break out this downward sloping red resistance line, if we were stopped out in the meantime, then we can add it back there. In terms of the crypto-related equities, nasty close yesterday, so I didn't take this trade, but I think if we can have a breakout, retest, and a possible resumption out of this downward sloping blue resistance line, I think I could see myself adding a Coinbase position today, so maybe it will look something like this. So don't be surprised if that's what we do today. I'll see how the close goes. If we're still showing strength into the close of today, then expect me to add this position back for Coinbase. We're still pushing MicroStrategy, aren't we? So far, so good. Both positions on. Riot will not break out. As you can see, we've had this lined up here, trying to get a breakout of this downward sloping blue resistance line to add a position. It hasn't done that yet, but a daily close outside of here, and expect me to do the same. Marathon, I'm kind of hoping, to be honest, we're going to see Marathon roll over because I'd much rather buy a retest down here than I would try to chase this higher. If this moves higher, I'll probably just continue to push the initial position. But if we can get a pullback, I do think that is a buyable dip for Marathon. So overall, things are looking all right. I'm not too concerned. Everything seems to be more or less behaving itself. We've got plenty of exposure. There's plenty of opportunity to increase exposure at the end of the month, which also just so happens to be the end of this week. I'm in the process of finding some high quality setups for the members only because I know I've got some new level 3 members. I think there's going to be some big opportunity, like I said, coming out at the end of this month. For those of you that don't want to pay for the membership, I completely understand. You don't have to, and I'll still continue to give away everything I give away for free on this channel. There's still plenty of opportunity coming up. There are still crypto related equities. There are still opportunities to add in Tesla and the S&P and so on and so forth. And we've obviously got some metals trades coming up as well, whether they roll over or whether they break out imminently. So there's plenty of opportunity across the board. As ever, we continue to take things one day at a time, no emotion, no bias, and we'll let the charts tell us which way we're going to trade. In the meantime, that's it from me. Take care. All the best. Cheers. Bye.